welcome to my channel. God damn it, now I said that again. It goes so automatic. Hey lovely people. So today I'm going to be talking about the books I read in May. And May, it was kind of exam month and there was a lot of stuff happening, events, social stuff that stresses me out, makes me super tired. So I basically just haven't read a lot of books this month. I read 7 books, which is still quite a lot. I mean, compared to what I used to read before. As usual, I'm going to be doing a little bit of review, telling you guys about my opinion. So the Goodreads rating is going to be in this corner. It's out of 5. And my rating is going to be in this corner. And yeah, I'm just gonna get started. So the first book that I read this month is More Than This by Patrick Ness. So I know he's read Monster Calls and everybody loves that book. But this is actually a science fiction book. On the back, it doesn't really say much what it's about, like it's really confusing. It's basically about this boy who dies and he wakes up in what he believes to be hell. And I really can't tell you guys more about this because he drowns and he wakes up and he is in what he believes is hell. Basically, loads of stuff happen. It is kind of science fiction based, but the back doesn't really say anything about that. I really would recommend people just go into this book not knowing anything at all. What I liked about this book, that it was so deep, kind of, it touched on so many topics. It talked about humanity. You kind of get to know the main character's story from before he died, like slowly it comes back. It's just such a good book, and I'm definitely going to read Patrick Ness' other books because I really like this book. The next book I read was Maybe One Day by Melissa Cantor. This book was recommended to me by a very loyal subscriber, Ali Carey, and she really wants me to read this book. It's basically about 2 best friends who've gone to this ballet school almost their whole life, and they get kicked out because it's so high prestigious. They don't have any more spots. So I love this because I'm a dancer, so I really like the dance aspect of it, and I could really relate to the main character because when she switched schools to a normal school, she didn't want to dance. It was so difficult for her to start dancing again, and I can completely relate to that. Not the main character, but the other friend, Olivia. She gets cancer, and yeah, a lot of things happen. So it's basically about their journey together, and the main character is also struggling with a lot of stuff and like adapting and stuff. So yeah, I like this book. It felt like it was a bit of like a younger audience. Like it's a very comfortable book. It's kind of like when you watch a movie but you're reading a book instead. So I had no problems with the language, but it wasn't like amazing or mesmerizing, but it was so comfortable reading the actual book. There was a lot of issues I had with how the main character, when she was interacting with other people, she would only talk about her problems, and you'd never know anything about other people in the context of their lives, and it would never become forth, so it kind of like seemed a little bit unnatural. I finished this book like at 2 at night, and I was crying for 2 hours because I couldn't put the book down. It was just so sad. I cried so much. Like I was sobbing, like at the end, like when I put the book down, I was just like so I guess it was a good book because it touched me so much. But on the front it says best friends don't last forever. It's so spoilery, like it basically tells you what happens at the end. I really didn't like that. So the next book I read was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This was a book that was recommended to me by my dance teacher. It's like a high fantasy. It's like 700 pages long, and it's probably the longest book I've ever read, but holy shit, this book. I think this is also like one of my books, like all-time favorite books. I loved this book. Oh my god. I have the second book too, and it's like 1,100 pages, and I literally can't wait. It's gonna be like my summer read. It's really hard to explain the book because it's basically about Kvathi, or however you say it, his story, everything from when he grew up and like just his whole story, and it's just so complex to explain. Just read it and you'll understand. So basically, he is an innkeeper at a bar, and this guy who wants to tell his story comes there and he tells a story to this guy. Basically, then you get to know about his whole world, but it's basically about him telling his whole story and how he kind of ended up where he did. But this is only half of his story. His story continues in the next book. But I just love the magic system, like the sympathy that is explained in this book is just so good. It seems so real, like it feels like it's actually happening when you're reading this book. It's so, you're in the story, and like I didn't think it was so good when I was reading it, but every time I put the book down, I'll be like, oh my god, I love this story. Like I'll just keep on thinking about it, and the creatures and everything is just so goddamn good. Just read this book. The next book I read was Lincoln and the Bardo by George Saunders. This is a new book and it is his debut novel. This is definitely an adult book, and I don't live in the US, I don't know a lot about American history or president and stuff, but this is about Lincoln and it's based upon a true evening when his son died of a fever and he gets buried, and that night he comes back to the graveyard, takes his son out of like the box and starts cradling him. But what's so interesting about this book is that it's told from the perspective of the ghosts that live in the graveyard where the son is buried. And it all happens during one night, but this book is so artistic and you can't really imagine how the author even put this together because it's written like a play. So basically it's like loads of voices of ghosts that narrate, some tell stories, they tell their lives, and they're all different and they don't really know that they're dead. And that's the interesting part. And you get to see it from their perspective. And then there's some chapters are excerpts from like news articles or quotes from people who lived at that time that tells you about the atmosphere of Lincoln's place, the parties, how he was, what happened at the night, and everyone has a different perspective. This is just such a complex book. In the beginning I was so confused, I was lost, but like if you start getting into it, it's just so good. And this is definitely an advanced read. It's like reading a classic. I mean, but yes, I definitely recommend this book if you are up for a challenge. That will definitely be worth it. The next book I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book that I've ever read by Sarah J. Maas. I liked it. There was some parts I'm like, I can't read this because it's so brutal. Like, there's some parts I'm just like, I don't want to know this. And maybe it's because I'm really sensitive. Like, some parts I almost cried because it was just so awful, the things that were happening. Like, the violence in this is just too much. I started reading the series now because the third book just came out and everyone was hyping about it, so I bought all 3 books at the same time because why not? This is about Pharaoh, who lives in a small town and her family's really poor and she goes hunting for her family, and then she hunts down a wolf. Her family becomes really happy, but the wolf turns out to be a fae. A fae are basically these magical beings that are kind of the royal people, where humans are seen as like supposed to be slaves for the fae and stuff, but they have a truce between them. When she kills one of them without actually knowing it's them, even though she does have hatred for them, this friend of the favorite she killed, called Tamlin, comes and gets her for a life kind of thing, and takes her to his palace, and she lives there. So basically that's the story, and there's a lot of things happening, the magic and everything. I really like it. There's just some parts where I really don't like the main character. She's so stubborn and she doesn't accept help when she actually should be, and the guy that is taking her just doesn't tell her enough, and I got so mad at the characters. But despite all that, I actually kind of like the book. The next book that I read is something I've been looking forward to for so long. This is Flame in the Mist by Renee Adjei. This is a Mulan retelling, and this is the same person who's written the Wrath and the Dawn series, and I really like this book. I'm going to be doing a review on this book, so I don't want to tell you guys too much about it. The major thing with this is that it doesn't follow the Mulan like retelling whatsoever. It has similar elements, and I'm starting to understand like that's what retelling is, but I just don't like that way. We can't say something is a retelling. You can say it's inspired by this story, but you can't say it's a retelling. And the reason for this is because this is a Japanese like inspired like culture. Like, the culture in this is very rich. I love the way Renee Adjei describes the food and the clothing and everything like that. And I do like the main characters, and the wisdom in this book is just amazing. But the thing with this is that Mulan is Chinese. It's a Chinese book, and this is Japanese, obviously Japanese. And I really didn't like that because I think it's a major flaw. Why make it Japanese when the original is Chinese? Like, I don't know, I feel it's kind of ignorant. But I do recommend this book, but I'll be talking more about it in my review that's coming up. The last book that I read was I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai. I don't really know much about her story since I was kind of young when this book came out, and everything about her kind of happened then. So this book is basically about her and her life in Pakistan and everything that happened there. She basically got shot by the Taliban because she stood up for education, and she is just, she's so intellectual, she loves politics, like the way she describes her history with her country is just so amazing. I love the way she's so interested about it, she's so clever, she just talks so much about like her family, their stories and stuff. I had a difficult time with the names, I have to admit. Sometimes I just skipped it and just read on. There's some parts that are kind of lengthy, but there's also a really good book. I really like this story because some parts of me think like everything that happens there, it's just so horrible, and the things that like happen to the women and the way they use religion to control people, it aggravates me so much. But what I loved about this is that you got to see her perspective on also kind of our culture and Western culture, and also how you kind of want to live her life because everything is so open, you know. You welcome people into your home if they don't have anywhere to stay, and you know, people are so welcome and they're like sharing, and it's a culture we don't have here like in Western parts. So I really appreciated reading this book, and I'm excited to watch the film. Those are all the books that I read during May. I hope you guys like this review. If you read any of these books or if you have any recommendations for me, please comment below, and have a great day, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye!